Venezuela. On his wife, a country trip during the crisis. The proud face of the revolutionary hero Simon Bolivar is seen in the banknote stacks of dirty boxes in a supermarket floor, doubling up as a currency exchange in a small border town in Amazon. Venezuela is the highest sect, and once said that Latin America represents the most powerful petro-economy, but one of the most striking changes in the wealth of a country is a worthless symbol. Venezuela, which has more oil reserves than Saudi Arabia, should at least be modestly prosperous. Instead, the world's fastest contracting economy, the second highest murder rate, inflation to 1,000%, and the poor members of the 30 million population push food and medicine to the edge of a human heaven. To get a snapshot of the rapidly changing and sometimes tragically surreal socio-economic landscape, The Guardian traveled 870 miles from the Amazonian border of Brazil to Caracas in the capital. Santa Helena do money comes in suitcases. In most of the past, the border province of Santa Helena do was regarded as an underdeveloped outpost, devoid of the distances of goods and services on the coast and in the interior. Local residents said the government removed food purchasing tariffs in Caracas 2 months ago because of the helplessness of the alleviation of the famine and the weak control of the economy. There is a steady flow of merchants in Venezuela buying rice, sugar, wheat and pasta nuggets to sell. People are using cash because Santa Helena is very unreliable for debt or credit cards that are distant from the rest of the backward country. This probably means that they spend more time and effort and have more money than any other. Life could have been easier if the authorities were printing more than 100 bolivars with less than 10 pence, less than 8 p's. But the central bank seems reluctant to make a move in the 1980s and 1990s to confirm the level of hyperinflation that has not been seen in Latin America since the crises in Brazil and Argentina. As a result, the indigenous people have to pay 12-fold money for everything. Even if it is paper, it can be bulky and heavy. Gran Sabana, cheaper than oil. The tendency of the government to be subsidized below the cost of production for many products is an important reason why the economy is so complicated. Petroleum is a habit. Price perceptions are distorted like a psychotropic drug. Historically, abundant material sees Venezuela as the right to produce cheap gasoline, so the current price of 1 liter of high-grade gasoline is only 6 bolivars at the same rate, despite political incentives and hyperinflation. Despite government incomes collapsing, global markets and climate change, it is 100 times cheaper than mineral water. This meant that the fuel bill for a 1,400-kilometer journey was less than kilos. In 1999, when Hugo Chavez came to power, he chose to go a step further and used gasoline to subsidize basic goods such as rice, sugar, toilet paper, sanitary towels and medicine. It was a sacrifice, populist movement that allowed the poor to finally share their nation's oil wealth. But at the same time he suppressed incentives for producers and created a dependency and land marketing system that caused economic problems before Chavez was killed in 2013, and global crude oil collapsed the following year. Analyze Venezuela's worsening economic crisis. Guardian briefing: the shadow of hunger, the desperation of crowds waiting for food and the spread of confusion threatens Nicolas Maduro's government. The successor, Nicolas Maduro, has tried to maintain and even expand this policy even though crude oil prices have fallen by 60% since 2014. Even in the middle of the crisis, the government still downloaded homes, cars, DVD players, or homes for free. Microwave ovens. The road further north passes the state of Anzoátegui, where the largest refineries and aluminum facilities of Venezuela are located over the Orinoco River. Almost all of them are consumed. Production at PDVSA state-owned oil company fell 450,000 barrels per day from 2.7 million barrels in 2014. Considering that every barrel has less than half of its value 2 years ago, there is a tremendous hole in the financing of the state. However, this is a relatively small decline compared to agriculture. On the roadside, there are empty, fertile lands and relatively few products. There are very few incentives for farmers, as prices of many vegetables are kept at low levels. According to private sector analysts, between 2012 and 2015, domestic grain production decreased by 80%, meat by 40% and vegetables by 18%. In the short wing there was a time when it faced imports, but the state should use the remaining oil pipelines to pay the debtors. Private companies are struggling as a result of the weak bolivar. The Unicasa Supermercado in El Tigre has few customers and very little variety. Today, there are no rice, sugar, flour, jam, cooking oil, toilet paper, dense milk, vinegar or baby products. Demand is falling. Last year, Grisanti estimates that beer sales fell by 75%, canned peas and corn by 90%. It has become a luxury item, which shows the level of crisis Venezuela is suffering. Barcelona, Maduro diet. If you have foreign money, there's still plenty of food. However, the minimum wage of $22,500 a month is not earned up to 1/4 of the population. They rely on subsidized grain, toiletries, and medicines provided by the state, but there is no longer enough to move around, which is not only hungry but also unhealthy. In Luis Rezides Hospital in a city close to the Caribbean coast, medical staff often have to cope with the increasing incidence of essential drugs, the recurrence of long-term illnesses such as diphtheria, and an increase in malnutrition. We read malnutrition in medical books, but now we see cases in Africa. Last year things went much worse, said a doctor who wanted anonymity. The nutritional crisis is not sub-Saharan Africa or North Korea. In the streets, people do not seem to have an obvious lack of nutrition, and there are many road vendors selling food that they can afford. Imports from Brazil and Colombia alleviated some of the pressure. However, the situation is proceeding in a worrying way. Food shortages harm Venezuelan people's diet according to the Food and Nutrition Foundation. In the last 5 months, average weight loss in Venezuela is estimated to be between 5 kilograms and 15 kilograms, with 25% of children underage. While acknowledging the government is a problem, the opposition supporters in the academia and NGO sector are claiming to exaggerate the numbers and increase social unrest. Nonetheless, the lack of official statistics requires that most people go through the worst. According to the research company Data Analysis, half of the people who work on any line work in this shady arbitrage. Some are doctors or teachers. They can do more than sort and sell by a few pennies per hour. They are paid in the public system. 1 million people moved to the streets of Caracas to demand that the government be recalled, and another major rally was called on Wednesday. Although the opposition is weak and divided, Maduro is on the ropes. The approval rate dropped to 15% and the PSUV party lost control of the legislature. Meanwhile, the army, a strong political force throughout Venezuela's history, is becoming increasingly effective. In July, General Padrino Lopez was responsible for food production and distribution. As the chief of the Great Mission of the Sovereign Supply, other ministers must respond to it. The militarization of the food supply will be consistent with the insistence of the government that Venezuela is the victim of an economic war carried out by Colombian gangs, multinational corporations and financial institutions, which keep merchants, exchange rates, and run away from illegal fugitives. Certainly, both corruption and the private sector played an important role in the crisis. However, whatever the forces of egg flow in the collapse of Maduro did not cause chaos as much as the government's allied politics. Venezuela was moving towards stagnation even before the price of oil fell. In most cases, many economists believe that levels of poverty in Venezuela are now higher than Chávez's power comes 18 years ago. The government will appeal, but it is easy to see who in Caracas suffered the consequences. It is still possible to buy champagne, Belgian chocolates and U.S. medicines for the rich. In the meantime, the poor are forced to spend more hours waiting for rice, health towels and antibiotics. Chavez does have good intentions, said the taxi driver Lopez, who initially helped the poor to do more than any government had done before. The problem is that good intentions are not